Okay, what I want to talk about right now, folks, is we're getting ready to take out this 200 amp service panel, and now the question is our 220s and our 110 circuit. So here's what I normally do. I'm going to go down to a, basically, let me just demonstrate. 30 amp 220, of course, all the breakers are disconnected and everything outside. I've already disconnected all the service center. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to loosen the breakers, take the wires off, and I'm going to tape the wires together. Everything I tape together I know is 220. I see this little thing here is in my way. Let me take this out of the way here real quick. The 30 amp breakers and the 60 amps and 40 amps are not really the issue when you go to label them as far as what's 220 and what's not, because the majority of the time anything over 10 gauge is a 220, but here's one that's trickier. I'm going to show you this 220. 20 amp double pole because the tabs are tied together. We'll pull it out. Now this is a 20 amp. Okay, so I'm going to disconnect it. This is where it gets hairy-carried. Now if you hooked it up wrong and you put it up 220, 110 volts, it probably would work, but it's not the way it's designed. Obviously somebody's put it in here for it. Also, I want you to notice this wire. It's 14 gauge. They have the wrong breaker size on here. So I'm going to pull this all the way to the top. And you got to really take your time, folks, on these first few minutes of disconnecting the service to make sure you get this right. So once again, now when I go to hook this up, I'm going to, this is a 15 amp double pole. Let me do it again for you. Here's another 20 amp circuit. 20 amp, 220. Alright, that could possibly have been either one, so I'm going to pull out the breaker. Now, one thing about this problem here is you got this white wire, which is a neutral, so that white wire really should be taped black for several inches. So we know it's a hot wire. Also, this one's fed from the bottom too. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do this because my man, when he gets over to hook up the breakers, there'll be no question. He'll know this is a 220 circuit. Okay, now I'm going to take it, I'm going to tie them together. So he knows this is another 220 circuit. On your 110s, it really doesn't matter. Just so you know, these are all tandem breakers. They're not 220. They're 110s. And then if you trace this back, you'll see the neutral going to the neutral bar in here, okay? So once again, I'm going to pull down a 40 amps 220. And I could, in theory, not tape these together. I'm just going to do it anyway because stay consistent with the pattern. As electricians, we should know what size breaker. I mean, we know right now, see this wire size? We know that's an 8 gauge wire in copper. You also can look on the wiring and see the rating, okay? If you don't know, you shouldn't be doing it anyway, but always size the breaker to the wire that you have. Another 220. Okay, now here's another 30 amp, 220. Once again, everything's dead. Changing out a panel box is not very hard, as long as you just keep focused on what you're doing and have a system. Once again, a 30 amp, 220. Now, one thing I recommend is a lot of times pulling these wires on up here and getting them to the top so they're organized, so you're not fighting all the wires. So when you get ready to actually pull out all these neutrals or ground, you're not all twisted like spaghetti. I think you folks get the point. I want to show you one more thing. This particular panel has a GFI breaker. Okay? I want you to notice this particular breaker here has both the neutral here, going to the neutral bar. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The neutral coming in from the circuit, then you have the hot wire, then you have the ground wire, or the neutral wire going to the neutral bar. This circuit here, it needs to be identified. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to use some white tape, disconnect it. I'm going to mark it kitchen GFI. Okay, where's my marker? Okay, all right, just take my word, folks. I'm going to write kitchen GFI 110 volt right here. I'll pull this to the side for now. Okay, just want to demonstrate for sure what you know. I'm going to write kitchen GFI 110 volt. So when we go to hook up our new GFI breaker in the box, we won't mess that up and we won't get it confused with something else, okay? Alright, really folks, that's it. The point I wanted to point out to you is the 110 volt circuits are single. Now this here is a tandem. You see the bus bar. I want you to see how burnt this all is. So this is an emergency situation that happened over the weekend. We're just now getting here to change this out. So that's why these two breakers are bugged. So when you guys look at this, don't say, hey, this thing's bugged. You weren't supposed to do that. I know that, okay? That's why we're changing out the panel box today. I want to show you. Right here's a regular. Well, here's another single pole that's got 2 wires under, which is totally wrong and illegal. Here's a tandem breaker, 15 amp tandem, 2 single pole breakers in one is what this is. Works great when you have a panel that doesn't have the 40 circuits when you have 40 circuits. Okay. Alright, so the point I'm making is when you're disconnecting your panels and you're taking your circuits all loose, you make sure you identify your 220s. Make sure you identify your GFIs. Take the time to do that. If you have any questions how this works, give us a call at Jones Air Conditioning, 239-596-5855. Go to jonesairconditioning.com. Please share, please subscribe, and please comment. Thank you.